Hello everybody, it's Steph Curtis Riley here from International Glamping Business Magazine and Eco Resort Network and one of the organisers of the event. And I'm really thrilled to be able to welcome Sarah Dusek to me today. She's now the managing partner in Enigma Ventures. You probably know her best as the founder of Under Canvas, a hugely successful glamping operation in the US. Hello Sarah.
Hello.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about the transition from Under Canvas to Enigma Ventures?
Yeah, my pleasure. I've transitioned over the course of this last year. And obviously 2020 was a challenging year for all of us for mostly COVID reasons. And 2020 was very much a transition year for me, moving from being the CEO of Under Canvas to becoming the managing partner of Enigma Ventures. And Enigma Ventures, I have moved from being an entrepreneur to being an investor in the course of this last year.
And you describe Enigma as a purpose-driven investment fund. What is the purpose and what drives you to pursue it?
Yeah, what drove the purpose, which is to invest in female entrepreneurs, and we're focused specifically on women in Africa, in Southern Africa. But what drove that purpose very much was my own experience of being a CEO, an entrepreneur, trying to raise capital to grow my business, and the very real challenges that exist for putting money in a business, period, and B, doing that as a woman, which was an incredible roller coaster ride over a multi-year period, and realizing just how difficult it is for women to get access to capital, and how could I play my part in making that possible for other women to go on the journey that I've been on.
That's fantastic, and probably if you listen carefully, you can hear in both our backgrounds children.
Weeping, yes, wailing, disastrous noises coming from the doors of children. Exactly. Children being present. Yes.
One of the big challenges, but how much more difficult would you say it is for women to find investment for their ventures than men, particularly if they're from an ethnic minority, for example?
Yeah, I think what is underestimated hugely is just the lack of access to networks. And so many deals are done because of either warm introductions or contacts, or being associated in certain spheres of society. And if you're connected with certain spheres of society, you went to the right school, you know people who move in certain spheres, it's much, much easier. And those spheres, unfortunately, are very dominated by white men. And breaking into those spheres, finding a way to connect with people, to get connected in that space is very hard when you're not already in the club, and you don't already know people and you're not well networked. It's very, very hard. And obviously, we all like to invest in, or we connect with things that we understand or that we relate to, or that you can associate with. And so the challenge is, if you're not white and male, how do you connect? How do you get an in? Venture capital funds won't take cold calls, for example. You have to know somebody to get an intro. Same with private equity or debt funds. You need an introduction to be introduced. And if you don't have those networks, you don't know anyone who's raised capital, how do you do that? So it's an enormous problem. And it's one of the things I'm most passionate about trying to revolutionize and democratize, this idea of how do we create an equal platform for funding, where the idea is king, if you like, in that, the best ideas win, regardless of where they come from, regardless of gender, race, or geography. How do the best ideas for making our world better, the best business ideas get funded as opposed to the ideas that are just well connected.
I totally get that. I think there are probably psychological reasons why women find it more difficult to ask for investment as well. Confidence, and maybe
Yes,
they don't see that many other women like them succeeding in
absolutely.
this sphere.
Absolutely. We tend not to think very big. We tend to be juggling lots of priorities. And so often we tend to have businesses that are lifestyle businesses or side hustles, or, we put them on the back burner when there's an emergency with the family. And so all those factors are in play as well. And you're right, there are very few role models for women to, see that it can be done and, have something to aspire to as well. It's a tough space.
Well, do you think that this sector is beginning to change? Obviously, you've set up Enigma because you see that there's a need for this, but do you think it is softening up and that there are more women coming through like yourself?
I'd love to say yes, but I think the answer is still no. I think we're still very early in that life cycle, and I know even when I think about this particular space and the hospitality space, um, funding for this space I think is still very hard. Period, and funding for all genders, all races, I think in this sector is still very hard, bizarrely, um, and yeah, I think it's we're pushing a ball uphill, but eventually, if we keep pushing for long enough, breakthrough will come, and there will be a good snowball and a good momentum that really moves forward. And it'll be interesting to see with the challenge the hospitality industry has had in 2020, whether the desire for more experiential, more outdoors kind of recreation and hospitality will be embraced by the larger sector of hospitality overall, and whether that will increase funding into the space.
Yes, yes. Well, hopefully we'll find out more about that at this event. Now, for you, how does it compare? How, for you personally, now being on the other side and being able to invest in companies rather than going out there and finding your own investment?
Yeah, the journey is very similar actually. The I'm still fundraising for one, and I'm fundraising for a fund now as opposed to fundraising for one business. So my experience of fundraising remains the same. I'm still trying to sort of break glass ceilings and open doors for getting things funded. The experience of being an entrepreneur as opposed to being an investor is quite different. The joy of being an investor is the potential of making many ideas happen as opposed to one. And when you're an entrepreneur, you really have to be very disciplined about being very focused on what you're trying to make happen. And obviously the joy of investing is you can potentially assist to make many things happen all at the same time. So that's quite fun. But yeah, my role has also changed in the portfolio companies that I work with. I play now a support role as opposed to leading lady role. And so, the challenge of navigating, assisting others. I now think of myself a bit like a Sherpa. How do I help others climb Everest after I've climbed Everest myself?
Brilliant. And when you receive pitches now, what do you look for? What excites you?
The big thing I look for, well, maybe there are two or three things, but the first one I'm looking at always is unit economics, which is very boring. But I see every day a lot of amazing, creative, great ideas that are fantastic, that have terrible numbers. And any investor, whatever the sector and whatever the industry, is always looking for, because the idea of investing is that you invest money over here and that you make money over here, and you make more money than you put in. And there's an unbelievable amount of pitches that never think about unit economics, which is, it may seem really obvious, but it doesn't seem to be obvious to entrepreneurs that investors are really keen to understand if they're going to put money into your business, how are they going to make money, and what are the metrics that make your business work. And having looked at obviously dozens of even hospitality businesses, I am regularly pitched almost every single week by people wanting me to invest in their businesses, that many people have not thought about how their business is going to perform financially. And largely the struggle with that is because people don't know. We don't really know. But what you need to think about is you need to come up with your best guesses. Your thought through approach to how your business is going to function, how it's going to work, and how it's going to make money. So that's probably the biggest nub of what investors look for is the financials and the unit economics that will make your idea stand out from the next one. And of course, then the other one is uniqueness. So how different are you from the last pitch I heard last week? When you think about even in the hospitality space, I probably hear one or two pitches a week. Honestly, they're all the same, and they all have no numbers. So it's like, I know you have the best creative, most amazing piece of land in the planet, and you're going to create this amazing phenomenon space, and people are going to recreate there and enjoy it and love it. I'm like, yes, but so are 100 other people. So how do you stand out? What makes you different? What makes you really unique? And what's your secret sauce? Do you have a secret sauce? Because if you don't have a secret sauce, it's going to be very difficult to attract an investor.
Well, that's great advice. And when you were starting out, and even now, who are your greatest inspiration in business, Sarah?
Yes, I have a few. I remember as a child growing up and hearing about Sir Richard Branson's crazy endeavours. When I was young, I think Sir Richard is now in his 70s. He was pioneering, having crazy adventures and pioneering, breaking records for all sorts of things. And it wasn't until much later that I actually realized he was an entrepreneur, because my experience of him was he was doing crazy outlandish things and breaking records, crashing air balloons, exactly. It's nutty. But the more I have come to be exposed to the work of Sir Richard Branson and the myriad of businesses that he's involved with, and his just constant commitment to innovation and constant commitment to brand and building this sense of, he has a very strong brand identity, a very strong sense of purpose also, and the passion with which he does everything certainly makes him an inspiration. And then there have probably been other amazing female founders who have been ahead of me on my journey that have absolutely inspired me to believe I could do it too. And there are a number of those in the US that who've been very influential on my own journey and very helpful in terms of helping me understand where I was at in my journey and helping me take some next steps.
Oh, that's fantastic. And have you got any advice that you've been given that you hold dear and you pass on to others in business?
Yes. It's maybe a little bit of a cliche, but one of the things that's certainly become a reality in my life, and then a piece of advice that I would give to others, it's how you look at setbacks and obstacles and difficulties. And it's so easy for us to go, well, this didn't work because of a pandemic, or I haven't been funded because of this, or this business didn't work because of X, Y, and Z. But the reality is, our greatest obstacles are also our greatest opportunities. And it's like there is a diamond hidden in every challenging circumstance. It's like challenges and difficulties and obstacles are gifts. And the challenge is with repositioning our thinking about them to discover those gifts and to discover the breakthrough, because nobody ever built a great business by backing off when things got hard. Great businesses are built on stories of perseverance and resilience and tragedy and chaos and disaster, and finding a breakthrough moment in those. I think it was Jim Collins actually who wrote in his book, Good to Great. He examined the characteristics of companies that 10x themselves, and he looked for what were the qualities that helped companies 10x themselves and become, effectively unicorns for many of them. And one of the challenges, but one of the things that he discovered was the attitude of founders towards luck. And luck, we often think luck plays so much a part of success and our success stories. And I would even say, yes, you've got to have a little bit of luck. But what he realized through his data and the studies that he did on thousands of companies was one of the things that made certain companies wildly successful and was a trend for all of the companies that had certainly 10x themselves, was this ability to take difficult circumstances, negative circumstances, disastrous moments, and turn them into opportunities. And it's that kind of thinking, the ability to reframe and rethink and not give up and persevere till you find the breakthrough, that I think will be one of the things that will make entrepreneurs successful and gives you an upper hand when others are falling by the wayside.
Absolutely. Well, that's great advice, especially for those people listening who are going through the pitching process, that probably the knockbacks and everything.
And they're painful. It's painful getting no's, and it's painful getting hundreds of no's. And as a woman who's had hundreds of no's, you just have to continue believing in yourself. And every time you get a no, it's like, reflect on what I could have done. What was in the gap? What could I have done that would have made it a yes? What was missing? What did I do wrong? What doesn't work? What doesn't fit? And
Right.
continuing to improve and get better and refine and use the no as leverage to help you be better. But it's hard. It's very, very hard.
It certainly sounds it. And for Enigma Ventures now, what are your future plans? What will we see you doing in 5 years' time, Sarah?
Oh, if we had a crystal ball. But what I'm hoping, Steph, is that we are actively trying to fundraise $100 million at the moment. And I'm hoping that in 5 years' time, I will have invested $100 million into women entrepreneurs across the African continent. And hopefully, you will have seen us made a huge dent in the rise of female founders and enabling female entrepreneurs. So that's what I hope to have done in 5 years' time.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sarah, for taking the time to talk to us.
My pleasure.
If anybody's got any questions for you, obviously this is pre-recorded, so we will pass them on if that's okay with you.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Can I just say out loud, though, I don't want to be pitched.
No.
But I am certainly wishing all of you out there who are pitching and who are trying to make your dreams come alive and make them happen. Maybe my side bit of advice is get creative. One of the beauties of the glamping industry and ecotourism is that we've been creative with hospitality and we've started to think literally outside of the box. And I would encourage you to think about that in terms of funding as well, because for businesses in this space to get funding, some creativity is going to be required. So how could you think outside of the box and think about making funding happen in maybe a non-linear way?
Yes, oh, brilliant advice. Thank you so much. Okay, take care and
Thank you.
all the best. Bye bye now.